LeBron James, Michael Phelps, Patrick Mahomes, they all wear this. But it's not a Rolex, and it's definitely not an Apple Watch. It has no screen, no notifications, and yet it might be the most powerful gadget in sports. This strap is something else entirely. A performance edge tool created by a 22-year-old American college athlete from Harvard. His dream was to build a gadget that would transform into a global phenomenon. 10 years later, that dream is strapped around the wrists of famous athletes in the world. How did a frustrated college grad make his way around a niche already saturated thick by Apple and Fitbit wearables? This is the backbreaking story of Whoops you never knew about. Before Whoop entered the scene, fitness trackers were all playing the same game. They counted steps and told you how many calories you had burned. Some even nudged you to stand up if you sat for too long. Of course, that was useful enough for the everyday person, but for serious athletes, it was child's play. The truth was, those numbers didn't really tell you much about the body's ability to perform. You could run 5 miles but never recovered enough to do it again tomorrow. There was no way to know if your body needed more rest, if your sleep actually restored you, or if there were just hours spent in bed. None of the mainstream trackers could tackle these issues. That gap was too wide for pro athletes. Winning or losing a match often comes down to a tiny margin, a fraction of a second, a single burst of energy, or the difference between being rested and being worn down. Yet these athletes were still playing guesswork on recovery, the invisible part of performance. So after getting tired of hitting that wall himself, one Harvard student refused to accept that blind spot. If no device out there could measure recovery, he would find a way to build one. Before we dive deep into the story, please do hit the subscribe button. Will Ahmed was a student at Harvard, playing squash at the varsity level. Like many young athletes, he was driven, competitive, and hungry to improve. But no matter how hard he trained, he kept running into the same problem: fatigue. Some days his body responded well, other days it didn't, and he had no clear way to understand why. That frustration soon turned into obsession, because while his teammates focused on games and classes, Will buried himself in research. He studied medical journals, spoke with physiologists, and ran his own experiments. By his senior year in 2012, he had written a 113-page thesis titled "The Impact of Recovery on Performance." Most theses sit on a shelf and gather dust, but Will's became something more. It was the skeleton of an idea. What if he could make a wearable device to measure recovery itself? Not just steps or calories, but the core signals of strain, sleep, and rest. So he started sketching algorithms, imagining sensors that could capture what the eyes could not see. Friends thought it was ambitious. Professors thought it was academic. At that point, nobody believed this science paper could grow into a company worth billions, except Will Ahmed. But would his belief be enough to get him started? Or better still, see him through? Turning Will Ahmed's thesis into a real product was never going to be easy. After graduation, he and a small team of classmates set out to build Whoop from scratch. This was a 5-letter catchphrase Ahmed liked saying before major games. Together, they spent years experimenting with sensors, testing prototypes, and writing algorithms that could read the body's hidden signals. The work was slow, and the first bands were clunky, far from the sleek strap people see today. Investors were not impressed at it. To make it worse, the market for wearables was already heating up around 2014-2015. Fitbit had millions of users, counting steps, and Apple was preparing to launch its first smartwatch. To many, Whoop looked like an underdog with no chance. Who would ever pay attention to a screenless strap built by students? But Will refused to play the same game. Whoop would not chase casual users. It would go straight to the toughest audience: professional athletes. These were people who lived on tiny margins, who believed that a single % of better recovery could mean a new personal best, a playoff win, or even an Olympic medal. So instead of running from the giants, Whoop went into the hardest possible arena first. By the end of 2015, Ahmed and his team were knocking on locker room doors, pitching Whoop as a tool they needed to win, not just another gadget to add to their shelves. But how would the greatest athletes in the world trust a device that had no pedigree at all? Will's bold idea found his breakthrough soon after. By 2016 and 2017, Whoop bands began appearing in professional sports. NFL, NBA, and MLB players tested them behind the scenes. Slowly, word began to spread. Then came the stars. LeBron James wore Whoop as part of his carefully managed recovery routine. Michael Phelps trusted it during his final Olympic preparations in 2016, when every stroke and every night of sleep mattered. Patrick Mahomes leaned on it to guide him through the grueling demands of football season. What made this different from the usual sports endorsement was that Whoop didn't start with marketing dollars. These athletes weren't paid to wear it, they chose to. They believed in the data because it showed them something no other device had: clear feedback on strain, sleep, and recovery. That authenticity changed everything. Suddenly, Whoop wasn't just another wearable in a crowded market. It became a symbol of discipline. To wear it was to say, I care about the performance at the highest level. It was no longer a gadget, but a badge of honor. By the latter part of the second decade, Whoop had amassed the kind of credibility no advertising campaign could buy. If the best athletes in the world were using it without being told to, what did that signal to everyone else who dreamed of training like them? By 2016, Whoop had carved out a very different path from the crowded world of wearables. Most fitness trackers at the time were built to entertain and motivate casual users. Fitbit told you how many steps you had taken. Apple's new watch buzzed with notifications all day, gamified your day, and showed you calories burned. These devices were flashy and convenient. But Whoop ignored all of that. The strap didn't even have a screen to start with. At first glance, it looked like a plain black band. But what it offered was something no other company was focusing on: data about recovery, strain, and sleep. Those three pillars, though invisible to the naked eye, became the foundation of human performance. Professional athletes didn't care about step counts. What mattered to them was whether their bodies could perform at full capacity again tomorrow, or whether they needed more rest. Whoop answered those questions with a daily recovery score, detailed sleep breakdowns, and strain reports that reflected the true toll of training. Over time, the psychology of wearing Whoop became clearer. It wasn't to show off numbers to friends. It was to prove to yourself that you value discipline and optimization. Suddenly, wearing that strap subconsciously told others you were a serious athlete. What do you think? Could a plain black band really carry more status than the shiny smartwatches filling store shelves? In 2016, Whoop introduced a business model that shocked even seasoned investors. While Apple and Fitbit made money by selling hardware outright, Whoop flipped the script entirely. The band itself was not the product, it was simply the entry point. The real product was the data. Instead of paying a few $100s once, members subscribed to Whoop for a monthly fee. The strap came included, but the real value was unlocked in the app: daily insights, sleep coaching, recovery reports, and strain tracking. Over time, the device became inseparable from the data it provided, and canceling meant losing your performance guide. This subscription approach was risky, but it built a different kind of loyalty. Members weren't buying a gadget they could toss in a drawer after a year. They were committing to a lifestyle of accountability and constant measurement. So ask yourself, how many companies could make customers pay monthly for discipline and still keep them coming back? In early 2020, the world changed overnight. As the pandemic spread, people began to search desperately for any tool that can give them an edge in spotting symptoms before it was too late. That's when Whoop suddenly revealed an unexpected edge other brands couldn't. Members began to notice unusual spikes in their respiratory rates, often a day or two before they felt sick. For some, the data appeared even before classic symptoms like fever or fatigue. What started as individual observations quickly turned into something bigger. By April, Whoop was at the center of viral news stories. Headlines claimed that the strap was catching COVID before people realized they had it. This really catapulted Whoop out of the locker rooms and into everyday households. It was no longer just a secret weapon for professionals chasing medals. Now, ordinary people wanted it for peace of mind too. The pandemic had exposed the weakness of guessing at wellness, and Whoop offered a glimpse of certainty. As the brand continued to grow in popularity, it began attracting serious investor attention. What started as a Harvard thesis in 2012 was now turning into a company with momentum that even skeptics could not ignore. By 2021, Whoop had raised over $200 million in funding across multiple rounds, eventually hitting a valuation of $3.6 billion. The investor list read like a who's who of venture capital. Firms that had backed some of the world's most successful startups wanted a stake, but it wasn't just financiers who believed. Athletes themselves put money into the company, seeing value not only as users, but as partners in the mission. That blend of capital and credibility pushed Whoop onto a much bigger stage. The leap from dorm room thesis to Wall Street unicorn made headlines everywhere. Suddenly, Whoop moved from a niche tool for athletes to a serious player in the wearable technology industry. The pressure, however, was now different. Scaling to billions meant more than serving Olympians and professionals. It meant convincing ordinary people that Whoop was worth a subscription month after month. Talking about branding and marketing, Whoop rose to fame because it was able to craft a precise identity in the minds of people. Right from the start, the brand zeroed in on a specific audience: elite athletes obsessed with marginal gains. This focus became a laser-guided path through the noise of mainstream fitness wearables. But it didn't end there. Whoop also embraced storytelling as marketing. Their content was more thoughtful than promotional. Through the Whoop podcast and social media channels, founder Will Ahmed joined conversations about strain, recovery, and human potential, a real talk with so much value for athletes. One other avenue that the brand focused on was the manner of usage. Athletes didn't just purchase the strap, it was earned. Whoop bands appearing on LeBron James, Michael Phelps, Cristiano Ronaldo, Patrick Mahomes, Ori McLaury, Justin Thomas, Nelly Korda. They were like endorsements without paycheck, organic credibility in the strongest form. Access also played a strategic role. A free trial month broke the barrier of a premium subscription, and tiered pricing options offered flexibility. That, combined with strong referral programs and elite social proof, helped Whoop turn members into evangelists. Now, the question hovering over the company is simple. Can it sustain growth beyond the initial hype, or will it risk fading as a passing trend in the crowded wearable market? From the beginning, Whoop tried to be more than just a product. It was a tool for identity. Wearing the band was a way of saying you value discipline and recovery. Over time, that identity grew into a community. Whoop members could connect through team features in the app, join leaderboards, and challenge each other to optimize sleep and recovery. What might have felt like a solitary pursuit became a shared experience. People bonded over their recovery scores, their nightly sleep performance, and their ability to push through strain. The culture that emerged was a fascinating pursuit of performance. For some, it was professional sports. For others, it was the everyday challenge of balancing work, training, and rest. Either way, Whoop was building a tribe, yet others saw it as the anti-Fitbit, a badge of honor that only the serious wore, almost like a secret handshake. It identified those who were committed to measuring and improving themselves. How often does a fitness device transform into a symbol of belonging? As Whoop moved forward, the challenge is clear. Can it remain elite while reaching the mainstream? And don't forget, competitors like Apple, Garmin, and Oura Ring are not standing still. They're adding features that overlap Whoop's territory, threatening to blur its advantage. Yet Whoop's vision has always gone beyond fitness. The company now speaks openly about healthcare, preventative medicine, and even saving lives through early detection. Imagine a world where your strap doesn't just tell you how well you slept, but warns you of illness days before the symptoms appear. What do you think? Will Whoop's future be remembered as a short-lived trend, or as the first step towards detecting how we understand our bodies? For some, it's just a strap. For others, it's a symbol of discipline and belonging. What does it mean to you? Would you wear Whoop? Let us know in the comments. Will Ahmed might be reading them too. And if you love this deep dive, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and join us for the next big brand story. And I'll see you there.